Hello everybody, this is Jeff Janess, and welcome to our sixth lab exercise in symbolization and cartography. In this exercise we're going to look at an existing layout composed of 4 map frames and various map elements, and we're going to see how these map elements like a scale bar, north arrows, legends, extent indicators, how they're all connected to the map, how these change automatically when the map is changed. We'll also see how to add a grid to a map. And in this lab exercise, we're going to be using ArcGIS Pro version 3.3.1. And we're going to try these activities in our Wallow Fire project, which is located in our Class GIS data in the Wallow Fire folder. So right in here, all we have to do is double click on the Wallow Fire APRX. This is an ArcGIS Pro project file. Double click on that, it'll open it right up. Now, it should look like this when it opens, but if for some reason it doesn't, maybe you've modified it earlier in the class, and if it's damaged enough that it just won't work for this lab exercise, remember that you can always extract a clean copy by going to the original zip file that you downloaded with the class data. So if you go to that zip file, be in here, 7-zip, open archive, it's in the Wallow Fire folder here, so you could just extract this and it'd be a clean copy. If you're doing it from the zip file, it's even easier. Just double click on it, go in here. I would copy this and then paste it out in some other folder, and that will extract it. Alright, in the meantime, let's assume that we have this ArcGIS Pro project open and ready to go. Okay, first off, a quick review. Just remember that the things you see in this layout, they're all map elements. We have 4 of them that are actual maps that are connected with maps that we have stored in the project up here. So these are all standalone maps. We've added them to our layout. When you select them, you get these 8 little boxes around it, which would let you change the size or move them around, that kind of thing. Remember that if you make changes, you can just hit Control-Z to undo the changes you've made. Now, the first thing I want to show is how scale bars and extent indicators are connected to a map. So this is our primary map right here. Now observe that these other 2 maps here each have this little red rectangle that represents the extent of this primary map. So we're wondering where the Wallow Fire exists in the Arizona-New Mexico region. This extent indicator helps us determine that. If we're wondering where it is in the larger United States, we look down here. So extent indicators are really cool. Now, next few steps are going to demonstrate how these extent indicators change automatically if you change the scale of your Wallow Fire map frame. So first thing we want to do is select the primary map, the Wallow Fire here, and then we have to activate it. It's a little tricky changing the scale of a map while you're looking at it in the layout. It's easy when you're in the map itself, but within the layout you have to take another step. What we want to do is what they call activating the map. Once we've activated the map in the layout, then we can just scroll in and out and change extents and scales just as if it was a map. So to activate the map, there's a couple ways we can do it. One way is to find the map in the contents pane. So let's find the map that's associated with the Wallow Fire. That's this one right here. So if we right click on the map frame, you have to do the map frame. It won't work if you select like this map here. There's no activate option in here. There is an activate option if we right click the map frame itself though, right up here. So this will activate it. You can also activate a map frame by having it selected in the layout here. You could right click here, you get a drop down option that has activate. And the last way is within the layout tab up here, if you can just come over here to do activate. As long as you have the map frame selected in the contents pane, you can hit this one. Okay, whichever method you choose, you hit activate. Now this map frame is in a condition where it's easy to change the scale as if we were looking at the map itself up, this tab here. Now, to zoom in and out, you might remember you can just roll the mouse wheel, so I can zoom in and out, maybe go to a much broader scale. And I want you to see how the extent indicators changed automatically. So I go back different places. These extent indicators over here will change accordingly. You might also notice that the scale bar has changed. If we zoom back out again, the scale bar now goes to a 30-mile range, scoot way out here. Now the scale bar changes to 100 miles. So the scale bar and the extent indicators are plugged right into the map. So any changes you make to the map show on these other things. Pretty cool function. Now let's zoom back to our extent. I want to zoom to the extent of the fire boundary. So you can right-click the layer, go to zoom to layer, takes you back. Now the next thing I want to show is how the north arrow is connected to the map. So we have the north arrow sitting right up here. I want to zoom into the layout just a little bit here. We have to unactivate the map to return to the layout. So we can do that by just clicking here. So I click that. Now we're back in the layout function. I can scroll into the layout. So we're looking close at the north arrow. Let's reactivate the Wall of Fire map frame. I'm going to just right click on this and do activate. Now suppose we rotate the Wall of Fire map. And you can do that in the properties of the map. So while this is activated, we can just right click on here, go to properties. Here we go. Come to the General tab in the Properties, and notice that there's a rotation option. So if we just change this to, say, a 60-degree rotation, it has rotated the entire map 60 degrees counterclockwise. Let's return to our layout. Let's scroll out. We see that the map has been rotated just like we wanted, and the north arrow has shown that rotation on the map. And we can change the rotation angle here directly in the layout. If we right click on the map here, come to map properties, it takes us to the same spot, so we can just erase that rotation angle, hit OK, the map turns back, the north arrow also adjusts. Okay, next thing I want to discuss is the legend. So let's take a look at it here. Here's the legend we got showing that shows the soil burn severity within the Wall of Fire region. The legend also shows the boundary of the Wall of Fire. Now the legend exists over here in the contents pane in its own little spot. So we can open that up. We can see that it actually has options to show all the layers that are currently within the Wall of Fire map. But only these things that are checked off are going to show in the legend. Furthermore, a layer is only going to show if it is visible, if it's set to be visible. So right now the wall of burn severity is turned on, but the fire history is not. So both of these are checked off, fire history and wall of burn severity, but we're only seeing burn severity in the legend because only burn severity is set to be visible. So if we turn that off, it disappears from the legend. If we turn on fire history, then that becomes visible in the legend. Now, this behavior in the legend is actually optional. If you want to create a legend that will always show some particular layer, whether it's visible in the map or not, you can do that in the legend properties. But by default, it's set up this way, so it'll only show an object in the legend if that object is visible in the map. So the legend also is plugged right into the map. Changes to the map show up automatically in the legend. Another thing that's kind of fun, you can actually change the name of a layer here. So if we don't like the wallow underscore fs underscore fire history, maybe that's not immediately understandable to people, we could just change this to fire history. Click off of it, and you'll see that that changes in the legend too. Okay, next step, let's talk about adding grids to a map. If you remember the lecture, there's three kinds of grids. You can have measured grids, you can have graticules, and you can have reference grids. So all of these are useful things sometimes in a map. They're not, you don't have to add them to every map, but they can be useful and interesting, and they can be kind of aesthetically cool too. So let's see how to do that. I want to add a UTM grid to the primary map here. So in fact, I want to go back to my burn severity. I just like that one better. All right, so a UTM grid showing lines across the map and numbers on the edge showing what the UTM coordinates are. So the way we add a UTM grid is first we select the map frame right here. So now I have the wall of fire selected. click the Insert tab, and then this is the option to add a new grid. So this will add a grid to the currently selected map frame. Let's click that. Now we have an option to do here. We can do graticules, measured grids, or at the bottom, reference grids. Now remember that graticules and measured grids are both essentially the same. Only difference is that graticules will always show latitude, longitude coordinates. Measured grids will always show projected coordinates. Now I want to use UTM, which is a projected system, so I'm going to choose one of the measured grid options. I'm going to just choose the black mixed vertical labels. I just kind of like that one. Hit OK, and it draws automatically. If you notice in the contents pane, we now have a section for grids. So the grid is now listed here. We could turn it on and off if we wanted, but we're going to turn it on because that's why we're doing this. All right, so we have one grid in it currently. Now one thing to notice is that this grid is actually something that only exists in the layout. It's not in the map itself. If we come back to the Wall of Fire map, take a look at that. Now, there's no grid in here. Now the grid is a graphic thing that's added to a layout, so you'll only see it in the layout. You only see it listed in the layout. If you want this type of grid in a map, you'd actually have to create it as a true spatial data set, probably a polyline or a polygon feature class. And that's certainly doable. I do it myself sometimes, but right now we're just adding something that shows up in the layout, so we'll only see it here. Let's take a quick look at how this grid is connected directly to the map. If we go to the map, change the rotation again like we did before. Let's just change this to 40 this time. See how the grid rotates to match the map? Let's change it back. We change the scale by activating the map frame and then using our mouse wheel to roll in and out. We'll see that the grid adjusts itself as well. Let's come back to the extent of our fire boundary. Get back to our layout format. Now let's look at how we can adjust this grid to be the size that we want. You know, ArcGIS just tries to come up with an estimate of the grid size that would be appropriate for your map just based on the extent, but we would often want to change that to some sort of interval that makes more sense to whatever it is we're doing. So we do that. We select the grid here in the contents pane. We right click on it, go to properties. That will open up the grid properties window. We can uncheck the option to do automatically adjust. That's where ArcGIS just comes up with its own interval. Now we're going to set the spacing specifically to be a 5,000 meter grid. We're going to click the components here. This lets us set spacing for labels, ticks, and grid lines. So we're going to set it for the labels and the grid lines. We're going to put it at 5,000 instead of 10,000. So let's do that here and here. So we see the grid has changed to 5,000 meter spacing. The labels have not. They're still at 10,000. So we'll come to labels, change this to 5. This to 5. All right. So now our labels are being drawn at 5,000 meter spacing as well. So go ahead and take some time to play with this a bit, and kind of get to know it, and pick a grid size that works for you. Rotate it if you like. In general, just kind of get comfortable with it. Now, one last thing. This is a problem that often happens. We'll set up a layout and we'll arrange all the little map elements in a way that looks good to us. Then afterwards, we'll add a grid to it with these numbers sticking out. It turns out that there's really no space for the numbers. The way we fix this is we're going to have to change the size of the map frame itself, and that's easy enough to do. You can just grab these little handles and drag them, and that's usually the way you'll solve this problem. Okay, so now all the numbers are visible. Just zoom in there and take a look. It all looks good. And let's just zoom back to the full extent of the layout. If you've never done that before, if you come to the Layout tab up here, this little button here will resize the layout so it fills the screen. Okay, and that takes care of lab exercise 6. Next lab exercise, we're going to go through all the steps to making a map and adding many of the more common map components to it. I look forward to seeing you there. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.